Mother Twilight? I didn't hear about
No,
this.
no, no.
She's privy to information that none of us know.
I really don't know. So we'll see. But I have done a rom-com and it was really successful in England. And so they're hard to get right. Tricky films to do.
Yeah, well, they all feel like they're the same. Are we?
We're ready, let's go.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, obviously, first, congratulations on the movie and the book. It's really wonderful. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Sophie here, because the thing that really works for me so well in this film is the chemistry between all the characters, and mostly the chemistry between you and everybody else. I mean, it's just wonderful, and if it's not there, then it doesn't work. So I'm wondering, when you were putting this together and you were casting, what was the process of that? I mean, obviously, how did you, I mean, I understand you saw Monsieur Lazare and you saw her, but did she have to go through individual, casting tapes with everybody? Because the chemistry is just really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that we get somebody who essentially is as close to Liesl, or for me, for my approach, to which tends to sort of border more towards the natural side of things. Is that we, I wanted to find somebody with Liesl's character and that sort of really strong sense of spirit that she has. On the one hand, she's quite vulnerable and she's got an innocence about her at the beginning of the film, and then at the same time, she's feisty and she's a fighter, and she will sort of stand her ground, and it's very, very determined. And it's hard. It was hard to find somebody Sophie's age who was both.
Right.
They were either one or the other. They were sort of quite innocent and vulnerable, or quite grown up and quite strong. And so Sophie, when I seen the tape of her, I was amazed because she seemed to have both qualities. There was just something about her that really stood out, and that I hadn't really seen from anyone else, and such a character as well. So, and she had to be intelligent because she had to understand the concepts that were playing in the book. And she had to have great spirit. So yeah, I mean, it took many, many months, and probably about 1,000 different people all over the world applied for either through shot tapes or through their network of casting directors.
Right.
And we narrowed it down to very few, and I think we held auditions for about half a dozen or so in LA, and then we screen tested Sophie along with 3 or 4 other girls in Berlin, and that was when I knew she was the one for certain. I sort of knew, I guess if I'm honest, from the first time I saw the self-tape she sent in, that there was something there, but seeing her in Berlin, one of the shots that we did was, as a test, was where she sits in the back of the car at the beginning of the film, and she listens to Hans and Rosa arguing about her arrival. And, to see her in costume with her hair made, and she was just, that's Liesl.
Right.
We need to look no further.
Well, one of the things that was amazing, and I told her last night, is her eyes. Like, the way her eyes catch the camera, like, the whole movie. Like, I'm sure for her it's weird to see her on screen. My daughter, I do parodies and stuff with her all the time. We do short films, and she's wonderful, but she doesn't want to watch them. So I'm very used to hearing that. But I actually wanted to ask about the dialect, because I think it's really funny to me the way that you said last night that getting that accent was really, really easy. Because, again, like I said, I do parodies with my kids. We did the King's Speech a couple of years ago, and I remember trying to teach my daughter to say, I can't remember what it was that she said. Oh, my husband is required to speak publicly. She had to say that part. And it took me an hour to get her to get that little thing right, like over and over and over again. And you're like, no, it wasn't so hard. I worked with you a little bit, and we got it. And I'm just, so was that wasn't a difficult thing? Did it not take days and weeks of training?
No, because it took weeks. I mean, it took 2 weeks because we had to, we were training all the sentences, and I think once you know the different words and the different syllables or the rhythm of the sentence, that's different. I mean, we do that every day, like maybe for an hour. So, I mean, the first couple times is a bit weird, but then you just have to practice when I try to practice when I speak with my mom, or when I, just go outside and go have a walk. And when I speak with my mom or somebody, I try to speak with the accent so it comes really fluently. so I don't have to think of different words. And then once you got it, it just stays there. And sometimes if I go back to my Canadian accent, the two coaches were there the whole time, so they would, tell us.
Right. That's cool. I also wanted to talk about, I mean, we talked about it a little last night, but I still wanted to get it for the interview, that John Williams. I'm really blown away that you got John Williams to do this. If you could kind of explain again how that happened, because I mean, literally, I was looking last night, I was like, it's been like a decade or more since he's done anything for anybody but Spielberg.
Yeah, I think so. It's bizarre, really. I really feel very, very blessed. I mean, how many people get to do the first film in Hollywood? And by the way, John will, do the score. It's like it is just unheard of. I think there was a contact made round about the time I came on board, and I don't know whether John had heard about the project or because he's not somebody that you must get every sort of request, but you don't ever expect him to accept it.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure where it came from, but we sat down and I got invited to this really lovely golf club in Los Angeles, and I said, do you play golf, John? And he went, no, not at all, I just like to walk around it because it's got a nice lake. So he just goes there to wander in the countryside, albeit outside Los Angeles. Anyway, we met and we just talked, and we really got on. We thought the same, we had the same sort of feelings about the film, that nothing should be bigger than the film, because John's known for these huge scores, which he does terrifically well. And this is nice, it's sort of humble, sort of gentle, emotional film, really. And I just wanted it to be as beautiful as possible. And he said, that was exactly the way that he felt the same. And indeed, the reason he was drawn to it was because it was that. Because it was a departure for him. It was a new challenge. He was doing something that was much different from what he normally does. So, and if you listen to I think some of his greatest work is not the ones that immediately come to mind. Everybody says Star Wars, Jaws, and all that sort of stuff. But we tempt the film, and not because it was John, just because the music was wonderful. We tempt the film with Angela's Ashes, and the work that he did on Schindler's, and they're very emotional pieces.
Oh yeah, they're great.
And they're just beautiful. But they're not the first thing that comes to mind when people say John Williams. When you listen to his stuff, he's just got such an incredible beauty to it. And I remember I went, he invited me around to his house after we'd been spotting the film one day, and because I said, what are your ideas, John? What are you thinking of?
Yeah.
And he sat me down next to his Steinway and just got his music sheets out, which he's all written out in pencil, and spreads them out across the piano, and starts to play the piano for me. And I had to think, how the hell did I ever get here? This just doesn't happen. Right. John Williams playing the piano for you. So he was wonderful, and I'm deeply honoured to be working with him, because he's a genius, and he's such a wonderful gentleman. Really.
That's awesome. And a great score makes the movie live on, because at least for people like me, I'll be listening to this score for quite a while. I listened to War Horse for like 6 months. It was just beautiful. I also wanted to talk about the humor, because I talked to a lot of people that had read the book last night. I haven't read the book, but I talked to a lot of people that had read the book, and they were like, this is a very dark book. That's how they kept describing it. It's a dark book, all from the point of view of, I guess the narrator that's in the film, Death. And they were like, the movie was much more humorous. I was involved in the screenwriting at all, and the translation.
I wasn't, but I would sort of argue with them on that the book is not start dark and then get darker. And
right.
There's a lot of arguing between, not to argue with your friends,
I have no idea.
This is my one moment to sort of go, well, no, they didn't quite get that right. The book, has to go between light and shade, and particularly a lot of the arguing between Hans and Rosa, which is one of the things I loved about the film as well. But and even all interactions between Liesl and Rudy, there was always that sort of interplay, and even characters around the town were based on people my parents told me about, where they'd go to. I don't know what you say here, but you go to a lolly shop in Australia or anywhere, and you ask for mixed lollies or mixed candy. Mm-hmm. And my mum told me a story about finding a penny on the ground and taking it to the counter of the shop, the local shop, which was run by one of the biggest Nazi supporters. And they took the penny to the shop, banged it on the table and said, mixed mixed lollies, please. And a lady came back with one lolly, slammed it on the counter and said, there you go, mix it yourself. And
That's great.
and that was one of my favourite, and that is in the book. And so there was, for me, it was always a thing of beauty, ugly. They're the opposites all the time, funny, sad. And tempering those things, otherwise I wouldn't have written the book.
Well, it
Yeah,
definitely
and
comes
so-
across in the film.
And I think the film does it, even, the film does accentuate that beautifully. And, like with Max and Liesl sitting in the bed imitating Hitler's mother.
Yeah, that's a great
that is
moment.
not in the book. Okay, and so I think the film does so many things in different ways really nicely.
Well, it also has to obviously do with the actors. I mean, when you're reading something, a person reading it is going to take away what they're going to take away, and they're going to read it how they read it. But when the actors are there to perform it, especially, I mean, like Jeffrey's wonderful in this movie. Every time he comes on screen, there's a smile that should come across the audience's face because he's this quintessential father figure. Was that part of what drew you to the role? And I'm kind of interested in general for both of y'all. What was it that you really liked about this story?
Yeah, it was the seeming simplicity of the guy. Just the tempo of it was so unlike what I'd been more recently doing in the theatre. Playing Lady Bracknell in The Importance of Being Earnest, or Pseudolus in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And this role just had a rhythm and and having read the book, the colours, like Hans's silvery eyes were referenced, and I thought, I don't really think in terms of psychological nuance. Like an image like that really appeals to me as an actor, that if you can convey that's something that's just seeping out of the character. It was a beautiful image to work from, or he had a face like a cuckoo or whatever, I like using those elements, pulling those sorts of threads.
And for you?
I wouldn't say that I'm a stage. Well, actually, I just really loved the whole story. When I auditioned at the beginning, I just didn't read the script or the book. And when I went on the plane to go to my second audition, which was in LA, I read the script, and it was the first time the script would make me cry. I thought that was really good. And I don't know, I just really, really loved my character, and the whole story was amazing. And I love that I could play from 10 to 16. I thought that was really fun. Because when you're younger, you always want to be older.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're older, you always want to be younger. But
That's true. Go on.
Absolutely.
so I've always wanted to be 16, so it was really fun when I got to that point. And I love that it was a time period that I've never experienced. So it gave me a little challenge, and also it made me learn, because I had to watch all these movies and, learn about the history. So I think it was a great experience, and also it can make me, throughout the research, I had to learn things at the same time. So I thought just the challenge and the whole experience, everything about it I loved.
Well, that's awesome. I hope to see you in a whole lot more. I know you want to go to the Olympics or whatever, but you're really, really wonderful in this movie, and it's very rare to see really wonderful child actors. So
Thank you.
I hope to see a lot more of you.
Oh,
Good to
sorry.
meet you. Good to meet you.
Cheers, thank you.
Absolutely.